My mom refused to meet my fiancé. The truth left me speechless. I always thought my mom was my biggest supporter until I got engaged. The moment I introduced my fiancée, Lisa, my mom shut down. No excitement, no congratulations. Just a cold stare and an excuse to leave early. Then things got worse. She refused to come to our wedding, avoided family gatherings, and acted like Lisa didn't exist. I begged her to tell me why, but she always changed the subject. Then, one day, completely by accident, I found out the truth, and what I discovered shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. At first, I thought my mom's reaction was just weird. I mean, yeah, she's always been a little overprotective, but I never imagined she'd straight up ignore my fiancé. When Lisa and I got engaged, we were over the moon. I couldn't wait to tell my mom, expecting her to be happy for me. But when I finally did, her reaction wasn't what I expected. She just sat there, staring at me, her expression completely blank. No smile, no excitement, nothing. Then, after a long pause, she just muttered, "Oh, that's fast." Fast? Lisa and I had been together for almost 3 years. How was that fast? Trying to shake off the weirdness, I pushed forward. "Yeah, I wanted to tell you first. We're really happy, Mom." She nodded slowly, like she was forcing herself to acknowledge it. Then, as if she couldn't get away fast enough, she stood up and started gathering her things. "I have to go," she said, avoiding my eyes. "We'll talk later." And just like that, she left. No hug, no congratulations, no. "I'm happy for you, son." Nothing. At first, I brushed it off as shock. Maybe she just needed time to process it. Some parents are just like that, right? But as the weeks passed, her behavior only got stranger. She avoided any conversation about the wedding. Whenever I brought up Lisa, she'd change the subject. And then, the breaking point, she refused to come to our engagement party, said she wasn't feeling well. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. But I had no idea just how deep it really went. At first, I tried to ignore it. Maybe Mom just needed time to warm up to Lisa. Some people take a while to adjust, right? But the more I thought about it, the more it bugged me. I decided to confront her. One evening, I called her up and asked if we could meet for dinner, just the two of us. She hesitated but eventually agreed. I picked a quiet restaurant, hoping we could have an honest conversation. As soon as we sat down, I got straight to the point. "Mom, what's going on? Why won't you talk about Lisa?" She sighed, rubbing her temples like the conversation physically pained her. I don't think she's the right person for you." That hit me like a punch to the gut. "What? Why? You barely know her." She looked away, her fingers tightening around her glass. "Sometimes, a mother just knows." That answer pissed me off. It wasn't a reason, it was an excuse. "So you won't even give her a chance?" I pressed. "You won't come to our wedding? You won't try?" Her face hardened. "I'm sorry, but no." I stared at her, waiting for more. Some kind of explanation, anything. But she just sat there, completely closed off. It didn't make sense. My mom had always been supportive, always involved in my life. So, why was she acting like this? I left dinner feeling frustrated and confused. If she had a real reason, why wouldn't she just tell me? Something wasn't adding up, and I was determined to find out what. After that dinner, things got even worse. Mom started avoiding me entirely. Calls went unanswered, texts got one-word replies, and any attempt to meet up was met with excuses. It felt like she was pulling away from me completely, and I had no idea why. Lisa noticed too. One night, as we sat on the couch planning wedding details, she hesitated before speaking. "Babe, are you sure your mom is okay?" I sighed, rubbing my face. "I have no idea. She won't tell me anything. She just keeps saying she doesn't think you're the right person for me." Lisa frowned. "But why? Did I do something wrong?" That question made me furious, not at Lisa, but at the situation. Lisa was the sweetest person I knew. She had never been anything but kind to my mom. In fact, she'd gone out of her way to include her, sending her little messages, asking for her opinion on wedding stuff, only to be completely ignored. "No," I assured her. "You didn't do anything. This is all on her." But I knew we couldn't keep pretending this wasn't a problem. If my mom refused to accept Lisa, what would happen in the future? Would she avoid our wedding? Our future kids? How far was she willing to take this? I needed answers, and if she wouldn't give them to me, I'd have to find them myself. So I started digging. I called my aunt, Mom's sister, hoping she could shed some light on this whole mess. At first, she seemed hesitant to talk, but when I pressed her, she sighed and said something that sent a chill down my spine. "Your mother has her reasons, sweetheart," she said softly. "But they're not reasons she's proud of." "What does that mean?" I asked, my heart pounding. She hesitated, then said, "It's not my place to tell you. But if you want the truth, you should check your mom's old journals. I think you'll find your answers there." Journals? What was she talking about? I had no clue what I was about to uncover, but something told me that whatever it was going to change everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. My aunt's words kept looping in my head. "They're not reasons she's proud of." What did that even mean? And why would my mom keep a secret so big that she'd rather push me away than explain it? I needed to see those journals. The next day, I went to my mom's house while she was at work. I still had a spare key, so I let myself in. I felt guilty rummaging through her stuff, but at this point, she wasn't giving me a choice. I searched the house, checking the usual places, her office, nightstand, even the attic. Nothing. Then, I remembered the old wooden chest she kept in her closet. It was one of those things she never let anyone touch. My heart pounded as I lifted the lid. Inside, I found stacks of old letters, photos, and a few leather-bound journals. I grabbed the one with the earliest date and flipped it open. At first, it seemed like normal journal entries, random thoughts, daily life stuff. But as I skimmed through the pages, my hands started shaking. She mentioned a name over and over again. Eric. And my blood ran cold when I saw my dad's name next to it. It wasn't just a name, it was a love triangle. The further I read, the worse it got. Before my mom married my dad, she had been in love with someone else, Eric. But for some reason, things had ended badly, and she chose my dad instead. The way she wrote about it, it wasn't just some old fling, it was the love of her life. Then, I found something that made me sit down, completely frozen. A pressed flower was tucked between the pages, next to an entry that read, "Eric, if things had been different, you and I would have had the life we always dreamed of. But now, I have to live with my choice. I hope I never have to see you again. It would break me." I felt sick. Who was Eric? What happened between them? And more importantly, what did this have to do with Lisa? I needed answers. And I knew exactly where to start. I sat there, staring at that old journal entry, my hands shaking. This wasn't just some high school crush my mom was reminiscing about. This was something much bigger, something she had buried for decades. I needed to know who Eric was, and more importantly, why my mom reacted the way she did to Lisa. The first place I checked was my dad. I wasn't sure if he'd know anything, but it was worth a shot. I called him up and asked if we could meet for lunch. When we sat down, I wasted no time. "Dad, do you know someone named Eric?" His face changed instantly, like I'd just said a cursed name. He set his fork down, his whole posture shifting. "Where did you hear that name?" His voice was low, careful. I pulled in a deep breath. "I found Mom's old journals. She wrote about him a lot." Dad sighed heavily and leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "Eric was complicated. He and your mom were serious when they were younger, but it didn't work out." I waited for him to continue, but he just sat there, lost in thought. "So why does she act like Lisa is the devil?" I pressed. "What does Lisa have to do with this?" Dad hesitated, then finally spoke. "Eric was your mother's first love. They were inseparable, planned to get married, the whole thing. But his family moved away, and long distance didn't work out. They lost touch. Then, a few years later, she met me." I frowned. "Okay, but—" He cut me off. "Eric came back into her life right before we got engaged." My stomach dropped. "What?" Dad nodded, his expression unreadable. "He tried to win her back, told her he'd never stopped loving her, said she should leave me." My heart pounded in my ears. "And she didn't?" Dad let out a hollow laugh. "Number. But it wasn't because she didn't love him. It was because she had just found out she was pregnant, with you." I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. My mom chose my dad because of me. Not because she loved him more, but because she felt obligated. And then a terrifying thought hit me. "Dad, what happened to Eric?" Dad's face darkened. "He left, disappeared, moved out of state. As far as I know, they never spoke again." I swallowed hard. Something still wasn't adding up. Why would my mom's old love life make her hate Lisa? Unless, oh God, unless Lisa was connected to Eric, and if that was true, then my whole life was about to get turned upside down. My mind was racing. Lisa and Eric had to be connected somehow. There was no other explanation. But how? That night, I couldn't keep this to myself anymore. I sat Lisa down and told her everything. About Eric, my mom's journals, the way she almost didn't marry my dad. Lisa listened quietly, her brows furrowed. When I finished, she just stared at me. "Wait, what was his last name?" she finally asked. I blinked. I don't know. The journals just said Eric. Lisa stood up and grabbed her phone. My mom's side of the family had an Eric. He was my grandfather's brother, but I never met him. He died when I was a kid. My stomach twisted. "Do you have any pictures of him?" She scrolled through her phone, looking through old family photos her mom had sent her. After a minute, she stopped. "Here, this is him when he was younger." I took one look at the photo and felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. It was him. The man in the picture looked exactly like an old photo I had seen in my mom's things, a faded Polaroid she had kept in a box of memories. Lisa saw my expression and grabbed my hand. "Babe, what does this mean?" It took me a second to speak. "Lisa, I think your great-uncle Eric was the same Eric my mom was in love with." She paled. "Are you saying our families have history?" I nodded slowly. "Not just history. I think my mom still has feelings about how things ended. And, maybe, seeing you reminded her of him." Lisa covered her mouth. Oh my God. It all made sense now. My mom wasn't rejecting Lisa because she disliked her. She was rejecting her because Lisa was a painful reminder of the man she had lost. And for the first time, I started to wonder. If things had been different, if my mom had chosen Eric instead of my dad, would I have even been born? I barely slept that night. My mind kept spinning in circles, replaying every interaction between my mom and Lisa with this new information in mind. My mother had spent years burying this part of her life, forcing herself to forget. And then, out of nowhere, Lisa appeared, unknowingly dragging all that pain back to the surface. But that still didn't explain why my mom refused to even try with Lisa. Was her connection to Eric really that unbearable? Or was there more to the story? I had to confront her. The next morning, I drove straight to my mom's house. She looked surprised to see me, but before she could say anything, I held up my phone, showing her the picture of Eric. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Her face went pale. She knew exactly what I was asking. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. "Lisa, he was part of her family. That's why you've been avoiding her, isn't it? Because she reminds you of him?" She let out a shaky breath and sank onto the couch. For a long moment, she just sat there, staring at her hands. Then, finally, she spoke. "I loved him," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "More than anything. When he left, I thought I would never recover. And then your father came along. He was stable, reliable. He loved me in a way I wasn't sure I could ever love him back. But when I found out I was pregnant with you, I made my choice." I swallowed hard. "And you never looked back?" She laughed bitterly. "I tried not to. But there's no such thing as never looking back. There's always a part of you that wonders, that aches. And when I saw Lisa," she trailed off, closing her eyes for a moment before continuing. "She has his eyes, his smile, the way she talks, the way she laughs. It's him. And when I realized that, I panicked. I felt a lump forming in my throat. "Mom," I said carefully, "Lisa isn't Eric. She's her own person. She had nothing to do with what happened between you two." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I know, but it hurts. It still hurts, and I didn't know how to face it." Silence stretched between us. I took a deep breath. "Mom, I love Lisa, and I'm going to marry her, with or without your blessing. But I want you there. I want you to try." She wiped at her eyes, looking away. "I don't know if I can." I sighed, suddenly exhausted. "Then I guess that's your decision to make." And for the first time in my life, I walked out of my mother's house feeling like she wasn't the one in control anymore. For the next few weeks, things between my mom and me were tense. We talked less, and when we did, it was short and awkward. I wasn't sure if she was still trying to process everything, or if she had already made up her mind to stay out of my life. Meanwhile, Lisa and I kept planning the wedding. Even if my mom didn't come, I wasn't going to let her decision ruin my happiness. Lisa was my future, and I was done waiting for my mom's approval. Then, a week before the wedding, I got a text from her. "Can we talk?" I wasn't sure what to expect, but when I met her at a quiet cafe, she looked different. Not angry, not cold, just tired. "I've spent my whole life running from the past," she said, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. "And when I saw Lisa, I thought I was seeing a ghost. I thought if I just ignored it, maybe it would go away. But it didn't. I didn't say anything. I just let her talk." I realized something, she continued. Eric and I, what we had, it was real. But it's over. It's been over for decades, and I can't keep punishing myself for what could have been. And I can't punish you for it either. I felt my chest tighten. So, what does that mean? She looked up at me, and for the first time in a long time, I saw warmth in her eyes. It means I want to be at your wedding, she said, if you'll still have me. I exhaled, feeling a weight I didn't even realize I was carrying finally lift. Of course I do. When my wedding day arrived, my mom was there, sitting in the front row. I saw her wipe away a tear as Lisa walked down the aisle, and for once, I knew it wasn't because of the past. It was because she was finally letting it go. Maybe love stories don't always end the way we expect them to. Maybe there will always be unfinished chapters, unanswered questions, and memories that still sting. But that doesn't mean we can't move forward. And as I looked at Lisa, the woman I was about to spend the rest of my life with, I realized something. The past might shape us, but it doesn't have to define us. Before you go, I just want to say, if you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. See you in the next one.